Good afternoon and welcome to Bigfoot and Company. This is Dr. John. We are so glad to have everybody here with us. I've got my co-host Matt, who's the head of Mountain Empire Cryptid Research Organization up there in southwestern Virginia and northeastern Tennessee. He's been out hunting Bigfoot quite a lot, and he's been a good co-host, been a lot of fun. And today, after I make a couple of announcements, we have a wonderful guest. We have Mary Joyce, who runs Skyships over Cashiers. I'm going to make sure I pronounce that right. I'm going to ask her in just a minute. I want to just go through a couple of things to let everybody know what's going on. First of all, I have been up in Clayton, Georgia, getting ready for the Georgia Bigfoot Conference. That has been a blast. There's so many nice people up there. I think Bigfoot's helping us already. We got a lot of folks interested, and it's a lot of fun. So we'll be there in Clayton, Georgia at the Rabun County Civic Center, April the 26th through the 28th for the Georgia Bigfoot Conference. Now, leading up to that, in Clayton, Georgia, I will be there along with Marshall Master. We're going to be at the Clayton County, actually the Rabun County Library on March the 29th from 6 p.m. until 7:30 p.m. for Library After Dark. Marshall's going to talk about Planet X and the need for communication. I'm going to talk about the Georgia Bigfoot Conference and all of the dome houses over there in a little town called Lakemont, which is absolutely beautiful. And we might have an extra guest with us there if we can get his schedule worked out. So it's going to be a blast there on March 29th at the Rabun County Library, right there on Savannah Street in downtown Clayton. So that's going to be a good one. Remind everybody, don't forget Lizard Man's coming back around June 1st, or actually May 31st through June 1st, the second annual Lizard Man Festival in Bishopville, South Carolina. This year it will be at the South Carolina Button Museum. Go to scbuttonmuseum.com and check that out and come out and see us at the Lizard Man Festival on May 31st, where we'll have the Dewey Bass Band playing. That's going to be they're awesome. In fact, if you want to hear them, they're doing an interview with me this coming Thursday night on Myrtle Beach Report at 6:30 p.m. So check that out if you're interested in hearing Dewey. And they're going to talk all about the Elvis tribute that they're going to be doing. So just a lot of great things going on in and around the Carolinas, Georgia, and Tennessee. So just wanted to remind everybody and stay tuned here at Bigfoot and Company. We'll keep you up to date on all those great things. Today, we are pleased to have what I would call a new friend, but she's not really a new friend to me because she has this website. It's and she posts the best stories on there. I've been reading it for about a year, and then lo and behold, one day we started chatting a little bit, and I'm so glad she was able to come on the show today. I would like to welcome to Bigfoot and Company for her first tour of duty, Mary Joyce. How are you doing today?
Fine. So this is a debut day.
A debut for you on our show. That's right, and we hope you'll enjoy it, and you'll come back to talk with us. But anyway, first of all, you're welcome. Now, first of all, I am from the mountains of North Carolina, and we always pronounced it Cashiers. Is that correct?
That's correct. Or no, actually, most people around here say Cashiers.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. So Skyships over Cashiers. Now, it's a blog style thing. You put posts up, you send out emails to let us know that we got new stories up there, and I am riveted by them. It's my kind of news site. So tell us about, first of all, how long has this site been up, and what made you want to get this thing started? Because I know it has to be a labor of love. You got so many stories. They're fresh. They're interesting. So tell us a little bit about your site. And everybody that's listening, go to skyshipsovercashiers.com. And I put a link on the Bigfoot and Company webpage so you can find it and join the email list. So, Mary Joyce, tell us about it.
We didn't really set out to do a website, but we found out there was so much activity going on in the way of UFOs over Cashiers, which is a mountaintop community in North Carolina. And there was so much of it going on, we decided we would start a website just to post the photos and the stories that went with them. Since then, and that was back in 2008, we've really expanded way beyond that. We do a lot of things about Bigfoot and Cherokee Little People and evidence of giants and different kind of archaeological finds and activities going on underneath the Antarctica, and it's just kind of expanded. It's really expanded with my curiosity. And my background at one point in my career was a newspaper editor and feature editor and columnist. And the wonderful thing about newspapers is that you can just follow your curiosity and do all sorts of stories. So I have continued doing that with this website. And what makes it kind of different from many of the things I see is I think it's very important to have visuals or graphics to go with the stories. I hate to see something that is just gray type. And so I almost without exception, except when we first got started, everything has illustrations or photographs or graphs or something that makes the information come alive a little bit more quickly. And another thing I do is that I will boldface things in the paragraph. So even those who like to skim through things quickly, can find the essential essence without having to read everything if they're really restricted on time.
I am looking right now at Could Lost Boys Bear Have Been a Bigfoot? Might have been. That was that story about Casey over there near Jacksonville, North Carolina. And thank you. You're right. As I go back and review stories after I've already read them, it's great to have those that boldface type to just remind me kind of what's important. So as a reader, we really appreciate that. We do.
Well,
and,
all my college notes always had cartoons and scribble drawings and highlighting so that I could do that very thing, go back and skim and find exactly what I wanted real quickly. And it's one of the reasons I still like to use books, because I can mangle them with yellow marker, and you can't do that with Kindle books.
Well, that's right. You can put those notes in there, but I'd rather have a hard copy any day and make notes of things that are important to me, when I go back and look at it. So that's very true. I like that, and we really do appreciate that. Now, my co-host is a Bigfoot guy. He's a Bigfoot explorer, and if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you about your latest story, and that says brand new Bigfoot movie script. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And Matt, here's where you can learn. I think we got a new script out there, don't we, Mary Joyce?
Yeah, it's actually we've been working on it for a while with a friend of, actually let me mention two people. Evelyn Gordon is the co-founder of this website with me. So a lot of times when I'm saying we, she's the other half of the we in doing the research on some of these. And Holly Rourke is the main writer for the script that we did. And we met her way back in the late 1980s. And we saw her launch her film career as a production assistant at Universal Studios in Orlando. And since then, she's gone on to be a production manager and location manager for Universal and Disney and Nickelodeon and Children's Television Network, Animal Planet, Discovery Channel. And so she is the main writer for this. And the article that we posted, we include a synopsis of the story. So if anybody is, curious or interested, they can read that, and they can even contact Holly. We have her email address if they're somebody who might be in the business and would like to read the script.
Well, that's great. I know that I got a copy of it last week, and I sent her an email a day or two ago. Said, I'm sorry I've been out of town, but I will get back to you. I want to take a look at that. I'm very interested in film myself. And it's always good when there's another Bigfoot movie out there, because so many people
what we wanted
are
to do,
attached to it.
Practically everything except maybe Harry and the Hendersons has been Bigfoot more like a menacing monster of some sort. And that is not the general experience that people have with Bigfoot. And so we're trying to come up with this story. We've come up with a story that shows the fact that they're really genetic cousins of us. And it's a very interesting story. It starts off with a pregnant woman who stumbles and falls, and cuts her head open, and is actually picked up and taken back to a cave where the baby's actually delivered. And so the woman has amnesia because she was hit on the head, and so she's with the Bigfoot for a couple of months, and there's a real bond that's developed there. So we feel like it's really important for this more compassionate, more balanced film to come out about the Bigfoot. We're really kind of tired of the monster movies.
Right. I mean, let's face it, Bigfoot are people too. I don't know if that's the correct grammar, but they're people too. They have good days and bad days. They just like us. And so apparently you're showing a story where Bigfoot's having a good day and is being very helpful, because those stories are out there. They really are. Matt, I know you've probably heard a number of stories where Bigfoot has kind of come to the rescue to people, haven't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've heard lots of stories where I believe there's one out there right now everybody's talking about. Is the canoer that got rescued by a group of Bigfoot. Now, Mary, is this based off of any type of, I guess you'd say, like any type of somebody's experience or anything like that? You basing the movie off that, or is it just
well, basically, the website was the inspiration for it. Holly has been following our website from the beginning, and since 2010, we've been posting Bigfoot stories. We have close to 60 Bigfoot stories. So if you get into the archives, you can find all sorts of things. So that was her first reference point. And she just got hooked on this whole idea of presenting a more balanced picture of something we would like to call a cousin, because genetically the maternal side has proven to be human and the daddy side is some unknown species. So technically we are a type of cousin. And there have been hunters who have reported aiming their gun at a Bigfoot, and through their scope they've seen the face, and it has looked so human that they have not been able to pull the trigger. So that's the kind of aspect we really want to emphasize. And that doesn't mean there aren't stories that where Bigfoot has been violent. It's usually where there have been hunters who have gone after them, have shot at them, have cornered them. The Bigfoot that we have here that I know about in North Carolina, they are basically shy and just as soon not have anything to do with humans. And it's very special when you have people who do connect with them. And what I've found so far is that those who really develop some kind of a relationship with the Bigfoot are really people who live close to the earth, who have simple lives, and which I guess makes sense, probably because Bigfoot would be able to relate to them more easily. And without any exceptions that I know of, all the really good stories have been from people who live in more remote areas.
Right. My encounter, it just happened to be an aggressive encounter, but I don't portray, say that definitely, that they're all aggressive or whatever, because we grew up on a farm out in the middle of nowhere, and pretty much we didn't know. I was a total skeptic of Bigfoot at the time, but didn't even know, anything about it even existing. But our area, it never bothered us. We knew something was around, but we never knew what it was as we were growing up. And then as I was hunting and I had my aggressive encounter, but I take a lot of that into effect. That's when I got to actually see my visual of it, was I think I disrupted his hunting. I was in the same area, we both went the same trail, and I think I may have spooked something, and he got mad about it, but he didn't want me there, and he let me know.
We ran into a very similar story. Evelyn Gordon and I were out in South Dakota this past fall, and we were on the one of the reservations out there, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, which is probably one of the more destitute reservations in the country. The people that we talked to were very nice, and there was a young woman who at the time was 29, and her grandfather had been a medicine man, and her older brother was a medicine man, and she had kind of a spiritual aspect about her, but, no official titles or anything of that nature. And she told us little people stories of them still living on the reservation, and she told us one of those hunting stories with the Bigfoot. And basically the same thing happened that seems to have happened to you. And she and her brother-in-law and sister went out to hunt in a more remote part of the reservation, and they came to like a gully where a small creek was, and they drove down into the gully, and they began to smell the awful smell that's associated with Bigfoot, and the truck failed. I mean, it died, and they were stuck down in this ravine, and the Bigfoot was up on the top of the ravine throwing rocks at them. It got so bad that finally the man got out of the truck and dared to go up so he could get cell phone reception to get help, but they were stuck there for some time. And not only did the Bigfoot throw rocks at the truck, it actually came over and started to rock the truck. Now, these people obviously are petrified. But what happened was they had come upon a deer that the Bigfoot was hunting, and they were also hunting. And the Bigfoot, certainly depends on his kill for his own, survival, and he was not pleased.
Yeah, that's very similar to mine. I had the smell. I was on the creek there, just hunting on the deer trail that I always hunt on. The smell had come across. I was getting ready to leave, actually. I'd sit there all afternoon and didn't see nothing or hear anything, and the smell had come through, so I knew it was around, but I didn't know at the time what it was. It was always around. It calls, it screams, but it never bothered us. Never was aggressive, and it threw a huge stick at me whenever I was getting ready to leave. It was shaking trees, snapping them. I seen it about 30 yards away, and that's when it threw the big stick at me and let out this scream and roar. And
did he throw it directly at you, or did he throw it close to you?
Well, it went whizzing by my head. If I would have moved probably about a foot one, yeah, it would have been a direct hit. And it was very angry. I may have spooked a deer because I've killed deer before whenever I was younger on that trail. And of course, like I said, I didn't even know what Bigfoot was or anything back in that time. And we always knew something was out in the woods, but it never bothered us. Found grass bed, long hair on barbed wire. We're like, I wonder what that is, just growing up as kids. But then as I become an adult and was hunting that same trail, and I knew it wasn't on the actual deer trail, so I knew I had been hunting it, because predators will take the high road. They don't go right on the direct game trail. So he was off the game trail, I was. So more than likely he was had the same idea I was. I'm hunting deer, and I think that he seen me, and it kind of got him upset. And he knew I was there before I knew he was there. I knew he was there just by the smell, but he was coming towards me even closer, so he probably smelt me way before I smelt him. And he was letting me know.
That kind of a story, and the story where, hunters are really going after the Bigfoot themselves, those are the two types that I have heard where the Bigfoot has gotten angry or pissed off or violent. Usually they will try to scare you away, but with a lot of noise or tree shaking or throwing stones, usually not directly at the person, but close to them. And they will do whatever they can to scare you away, if at all possible. And if given their preference, they would simply rather just scoot away and not be seen at all.
Right. See, I didn't chase it or anything like that. I got the hell out of there very quickly once I seen it, and it threw that stick at me. Because I didn't know what it was. All those years, we had always heard it, and I was trying to get a visual. I'm like, what is this thing, Because I'm looking at something that's not supposed to exist, but yet there. You become this
You didn't
shock.
know what you know now.
Exactly. and I'm looking at something. I'm like, what is this? It's not supposed to exist. And it puts a trauma on you. And that's why I've spent the last 20 years of research. And, I mean, it changes your whole outlook on everything. And I like to talk to, well, you know her, Angelina, and Angelina Shear. And me and her talk about, you know, how the trauma it gives, like when you talk to these witnesses and these people that talk about stuff. And it just puts, you can tell if somebody's actually seen something or come across something because it changes your life totally. You can tell that they have.
To keep a balance on this, there are at least 3 stories that are coming to mind right now about Bigfoot kids. And the first time I ever heard about, Bigfoot children playing just like human children was from a man who he had to retire early from the military because of a health problem, and he moved to a cabin at the base of a mountain in the Pisgah Forest. So the mountain went straight up behind him. Nothing was developed. He actually lived on an old logging road. So there were not, kids anywhere around. And he heard, it sounded like children playing in the water. Well, eventually, it turned out that it was these 2 Bigfoot children, and he had, he called them his Bigfoot neighbors, and he named the male Fred. And so the article that we used, it was Fred and Family. And so that was the first time with children actually playing. It went on with his story. I mean, he began to telepathically communicate with the male, and the male would come down when Peter was gardening, and Peter would share food with him from his garden. And but they wouldn't take more than what he gave them. So it was kind of a nice, friendly relationship. But sticking with the whole idea of children, I was in contact a couple times with David Ellis, and he is the, I think, a founding father, so to speak, of the Olympic Project out in Washington State. And this is a group of Bigfoot researchers with different kinds of expertise who are looking for evidence of Bigfoot. And east of Mount Rainier, in a very remote area, he has gotten all sorts of castings of not only footprints but handprints. On one occasion, or maybe more, but the one that he talked to me about and sent me pictures about, was there was this area where there were the very large Bigfoot footprints, but there were also some that were half-size and even some that were like less, about 3.5 inches in length. And you could see in some of these photos where the little ones had been playing on wet, slippery grass, where you could see the slide marks. So it would be like kids going sledding in the snow. They were just sliding across the wet grass like you would slide across ice. And it's the same area where they found the footprints. Another interesting part of that particular story is the Bigfoot in that particular area had 6 toes. And so it's important for people to realize that while Bigfoot all over the country have similarities, there's also a lot of differences. There are the most common ones have 5 toes like we humans do, but there are those with 4 toes and 6 toes, and occasionally even 3 toes, which I didn't know about until I was reading articles by a Bigfoot organization in Virginia. So anyhow, that was just another example of Bigfoot children playing like human children, which I think is really kind of a neat image to keep in balance with these terrible stories of fear and hunting and throwing rocks and things like that.
I agree. You mentioned the 6 toes and stuff. I was asked, a lot of people ask me at these conferences and stuff that I speak at, and they'll ask me usually about the different toes. Now, I'm like a 6 toe or something like that. Mm-hmm. I find it my theory. I mean, anything is possible though, but it could be anything. But a lot of the toes and stuff like that, they'll say, well, they're like this or that. I think I'm beginning to. My theory always has been that possible inbreeding because the population is so small and it has, different deformities. But you mentioned the three-toe. Have you ever heard of the devil monkey?
Not to be able to talk about it with any clarity, only to have heard it.
But they leave a three-toed track, and it was kind of interesting because I had to start doing some research because last year I was over in Harlan, Kentucky, and a man had showed me some tracks, and he had Bigfoot tracks, and he also had these three-toed tracks, and he called him old three-toes. And he showed me a picture, and it kind of resembled a baboon in the face. And so that's when I started doing the research on the devil monkey, and the devil monkey leaves a three-toed track.
Mm-hmm.
So my whole cryptid research has evolved from Bigfoot to devil monkey to just about anything. And as you talk like what is your primary research? What is your major research that got you into the whole cryptid? What started you into the whole research?
First of all, the website started because there were so many UFO sightings. But as the more that we learned about the area, the more I had contact with people and got reports from different kinds of, different people. There's a lot of unusual phenomena in the same area where we have the UFOs. We have the Bigfoot, we have the Cherokee Little People, we have evidence of giants, we have secret underground military bases. So there's a lot of activity that isn't quite within the average parameters all over this part of the mountains.
Now, Mary Joyce, I'm going to jump in because you said something very, very interesting to me. When I took my trip over to Rabun County and the Rabun County Library, I was talking with Stephanie and Kim. You might remember them. They were the nice ladies that had the place up. And she said, by the way, we had a woman come over a couple of years ago, and she gave a great talk, and people liked it. And I'm going to go get her book because she left us a copy of it. I said, great. So I'm talking to Kim. Stephanie comes back to the table and says, well, here's the book. And the book says Cherokee Little People Were Real by somebody named Mary A. Joyce. And I looked at that. I said, well, this is great. I need to check it out because Mary Joyce is going to be on my show Monday. We all got a great laugh. By the way, Mary Joyce, you were a huge hit over there in Clayton, Georgia at the Rabun County Library. I'm going to tell you that.
I remember that as kind of a small group, but we've, done a lot of different things. But
well, they liked you. They thought you were great. I can tell you. I can tell you that.
My best experience in Georgia was at the exhibition Bigfoot Museum, which was at the beginning of February.
Cherry Log. How big of a crowd did you have?
They have a new room there for lectures, and I think the seating capacity is about 70. And they had sold every seat, and they had some people bringing in extra chairs. So it was the biggest audience that they had at the museum.
Well, I'll let you know a secret.
That was a good turnout.
One of those seats was empty because I had bronchitis, but I already bought my ticket, so I couldn't get over there to hear it. But what was interesting about the Cherokee Little People book was that about 2 weeks ago, Jen Cruz of the She Squatchers was on Scarycast. That's my overnight paranormal podcast, and she was talking about the little people for about a half hour, how she has seen them and interacted with them up on the reservations in Minnesota because she is of Native American heritage. Her parents are members of the tribe up there. And do you mind if we do just a quick breakaway? I'd like to find out just a little bit about the Cherokee Little People. Do you mind just telling us a little bit about them?
No problem. Are you taking a break, or you want me to get into it right now?
No, we're taking a break from Bigfoot.
Oh, okay.
And and talk about this, and we'll get back to Bigfoot because we love Bigfoot here at Bigfoot and Company.
The little people, I didn't really know anything about them when I moved to North Carolina back in '98, and kind of dismissed the whole idea that they were probably just leftover legends. But then one day a man came in who was highly respected in the community, and he was an elderly man, a World War II hero. He'd been a pastor for like 40-something years. And he said very straight-faced, he said, no, they're real. And when he was a young man right after World War II, he was involved in construction projects at Western Carolina University, which is here in the mountains of North Carolina. And basically what happened was he connected me with all sorts of other men who had been involved in construction projects. And whenever they were cutting into soil that was supposedly virgin soil, they would find these little tunnels, and they were always cut into dense red clay, and they were square cut with an arched top, and it seemed like they were finding this no matter what they did. If they were putting in a sewer line or building a new building, or they would find these things. And so at one time there must have been like a whole little city of Bigfoot right where the campus is now. And the more I talked to these elderly gentlemen, I began to realize that none of their stories had been recorded. I did a lot of checking. And so I wrote the book not because I intended to write a book, but I realized that these were all people who, were elderly, and when they died, their stories were going to die with them. And so I was inspired to do the book because their stories were, and the men themselves were so believable that I just felt it was real important to preserve the information. Now, since that book came out, I've seen evidence that there still are little people. So, if I was to retitle the book, it would probably have to say something about Cherokee little people then and now, because you don't hear too much about it, but I've gotten a number of stories where the, people have had direct face-to-face encounters with the little people. Even when we were out in South Dakota, I was told about experiences with the little people, and kind of a really good story. This same woman I mentioned earlier, she and some other young people took their grandmother out to the creek to go fishing. So they set her up in a chair and gave her the fishing pole, and then they went further down the creek so they could play in the water. And while they were playing down there, like out of the corner of their eye, they saw something dive into the water. They didn't think too much about it, but they decided they would head back to where their grandmother was. And the grandmother had just caught a catfish, but it was so big it was about to break the line, and she was telling the kids to go catch the catfish. And when they came back out of the water, they saw these little footprints, I think about 3.5 inches long, going up the bank. And then not long after that, one of her relatives and his buddies were further down the stream, and they found a small cave in the bank of the stream, and they got into it, and they found what she described as miniature bows and arrows, quivers, and drums. And the boys took these things, and they took it back home, and they showed it to their grandfather, and he was not happy they had taken the things. He told them to take it back right away. They took the things back, and she said after that for 2 days they were having trouble with their chickens and their pigs being killed. Again, I am sympathetic to small creatures, and perhaps that's the only way they can fight back to keep the humans from messing with their stuff. I don't know. But you could tell the way she told the story, it was very vivid in her mind, and it just came through as a very truthful story. We also got, after first learning about Cherokee Little People back around 2000, I'd never seen anything like a photo. And then, about a year ago, no more than 2 years ago, friends of mine who live up on another ridge top with on a gravel road, isolated again, they had a game camera by their entrance to their home, and a bird triggered it, and so it went off. And in the background, you could see what looked to be a little figure. And so before they ever contact me, this couple is, debating between themselves. Now, is that a real little person or is this a spirit? What are we seeing? And so when they showed me the photo, I put it on the computer and turned up the contrast real high. And so anything that is alive will go into the magenta range. I did the same thing with pictures of ghosts, and it doesn't happen. The ghost remains white or light, no matter how high you turn the contrast. And so it was not a ghost. It was a living, breathing little person. It's not a real clear photo, but the couple went out there and they measured the height of the little person based on where it stood in front of a certain tree, and they said it was about 3.5 feet tall, which is a consistent figure that I hear over and over again.
Right. Jen Cruz talked about between 3 and 4 feet. That's exactly what she talked about. And that's a wonderful story.
I like to clarify that because a lot of people get off into the realm of fairies and creatures of that size, and these are consistently 3.5, 4 would be really tall, but 3.5 feet is like typical, and they are in proportion to a regular human being, and there's nothing odd about them.
Wow. Is that a picture that the couple would allow folks to take a look at?
I've got it on the website. I've got it on the website.
Oh, great.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure how to get you there, but I know it's there someplace. And, I did find it. I'll tell you how you can get to it. It's we have a whole section. It's called ETs and Bigfoot. That's the name of the section. And this is in the archives for 2017. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the fourth one from the top in the 2017 archives. And you can
1, 2, 3, 4. So it says game. Was it game cam photo?
May show Cherokee little person.
Yeah.
Right. And this picture was taken when it was really hot. It was on August 15th of 2017. It appears that we're seeing the back side of this little person, and there do not seem to be any clothes on him or hit or whatever. But this would never have been taken if it hadn't been for this bird that's decided to fly in front of the camera. I also have photos that I was talking about where I turn up the contrast and the little figure goes to magenta, and I have a picture of a ghost where I've done the same thing, so you can see it doesn't happen to the ghost.
Wow. That's correct, and the photograph of that is right below it. So I mean
correct.
That's and you've got the same thing when you've got the ghost pictures right below that. So very good investigative work, Mary. That's a wonderful job, and I will. If you're all right, I'm gonna put that on the front page of Bigfoot and Company and say, please check this out, because there are a lot of little people in the area. I've heard the legends since I was born. I'm from the mountains of North Carolina, and
where did you come from?
And from Morgan. Well, actually, near Morganton, but a town called Glen Alpine, which is on Highway 74 near Marion, North Carolina. And there were all kinds of things that people saw out there. And it got to where, I guess, as my mother was growing up and as I grew up, we kind of laughed and chuckled at those stories from the old timers. But we shouldn't have. We didn't know. But they saw all kinds of things back then. And the mountains of North Carolina are just rife with so many wonderful stories and so many legends. And some of those legends are very true. And I've learned to
By
really
the way,
respect
I would love
that.
for 1 second to go back to the thing I was talking about, the children, the Bigfoot children. There is a man named Wayne Wilson, and he is one of these people who truly lives close to the earth, and I think he would be very happy sharing a cave with a Bigfoot without a problem. He's kind of a big, lovable country boy. and there was logging done in the area where he lives, and so the Bigfoot moved to his across the street from where he lives, and he has interacted with them quite extensively. And the sweetest story that he told me was that Christmas Eve, I think it was 2016, a baby Bigfoot was born, and the parents let him see the baby. And so I thought it was really, really neat that on Christmas Eve he gets to see a baby Bigfoot little girl. So that's absolute trust for something like that to happen.
Did he describe the way it looked? I'm kind of curious.
Sorry?
Did he describe the way it looked, the baby?
He didn't. He just made it sound like it looked like a regular little Bigfoot baby. He didn't. Your question's really good, and I didn't ask a good question. I didn't ask him.
I'm kind of curious how much hair, when they're first born. I've had reports of some of them had little to no hair when they're first born, and I'm kind of curious, if that.
Your question's a good one, and I'm sorry I didn't ask it.
Oh, we get caught up in the moment. A lot of times we get shocked in the story that is being told to us that our mind is focused on.
Well, you don't want to you don't want to interrupt when somebody's on a roll.
Right. Yeah,
but it's a good question.
Curious.
If I have a chance, I'll ask them.
Great. Because it makes you wonder, newborn babies are born, and most times some of them will have a head full of hair, but some of them won't. And I'm sure probably Bigfoot is the same way. Some of them will come out. I've heard lots of cases. I've heard of different stories, where they've actually handed the Bigfoot baby, to others, and they've seen it and looked at it, and it, they're like, wow, it's kind of like a human, but you can tell that it's the traits and everything. It's still got a little bit of hair on it, but not as much as, a full adult.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
So I guess what we're kind of doing is we're showing two different sides of the Bigfoot, and I think that's important because we can't just lump Bigfoot into one category. Even throughout the country, they're not the same. The Bigfoot in Florida, for example, are more commonly called swamp apes. They're smaller. I'm not sure they have indicated a higher degree of intelligence. The ones out on the West Coast are the biggest and have often been the ones that have the most advanced intellectual capacities that have been expressed in a way that humans can understand. And here, where I am in the mountains of North Carolina, I think we're kind of in the middle about all of this. So it's just very, very different from one to the other, and yet there are similarities throughout them all.
Good point. I believe they're kind of like human. You're going to have good and bad people. I mean, same way with that.
Yeah, I mean,
most of them,
Hitler's the same species we are, or was.
Yeah.
That's right. I've got a question. I've got a question for you, Mary, and it has to do with a conversation that we had last week with Rick Rellis of Bigfoot Research Organization. Rick is very interested in the spiritual side of Bigfoot and the idea of portals. Now, and I said last week, that's fine. I'm glad you believe in that. I 100% believe in Bigfoot, but I think Bigfoot is a living, breathing, like a human. It's a person, and I don't have much of an idea or much of a feel about the portal idea and the spiritual nature of Bigfoot. And Rick just snapped right back and said, I didn't for a while, but I do now. Like he knew something, he didn't really care to tell it. And what was interesting is I hadn't shared this with anybody yet. I'll share the full story later, but after my trip to Rabun County, Georgia, I'm a firm believer in the spiritual side of Bigfoot. Something happened to me, and I'll go ahead and share it. I drove over the South Carolina to Georgia state line, and I felt like I was squeezed. I mean, it was like something came over me. It was like I was squeezed. It was like I was given a hug. It was like they knew I was the guy doing the Bigfoot conference. It was the craziest thing. What about you, Mary? Have you had any spiritual experiences with Bigfoot?
Personally, no, I haven't. Now I've heard about them. I really can't give anything. The newspaper person's coming out here. I mean, I would have to have a really good testimony from somebody or have my own experience to really be able to be conclusive about it. I certainly have heard about their telepathic ability. I hear that over and over again, so that they can communicate, their thoughts and feelings. And it probably mostly depends on our ability to receive that information. And oftentimes that's of a very positive nature. I just don't know about the spiritual part.
Okay, well, that's exactly the way I felt until this past Thursday. So I had quite an experience. I'll elaborate more on that later, but I was just wondering, because a lot of folks have really had those experiences. The She Squatchers have had a number of them. A fellow that a lot of us are friends with, Kiwani Lasperidis, up in Washington. He's got a couple of books on it, and he even has record, and a very positive record of his son having a miracle healing thanks to his connection with Bigfoot, which I don't doubt in the least. So I was just wondering, and it's just an interesting topic, Matt. Matt, have you ever had anything like that happen to you?
I haven't, but I take a scientific approach. I always believed that they were, just flesh and blood, but I have opened my mind a little bit, because this whole portal thing, I've seen cases with these circles within circles, and the Indians will talk about it. And it kind of makes you wonder, if with the UFO connection, and like I talked to Angelina, and, there could be, the connection to Bigfoot and UFO. I think, a lot of these portals is what I've never had a Bigfoot or anything like that mind speak to me. Nothing to that effect. But it kind of makes me wonder about these, like, wormholes or these portals.
Well, the portals, I certainly have gotten reports of that nature, and at some point in our archives we have stories about where either it's like the sky opens up and a ship appears. I've gotten that report a couple of times. And I don't have a problem with the idea that those beings that are physical like we are still might have the ability to be beamed up like from the movies. That's very, very possible.
That's like if you see the She Squatchers, Gene Cruz pointed out to me, Kate, went on top of, they had tracks, they had followed these tracks up to this big mound, and then they just end at the top of this big mound, and on top of that mound it had circles within circles, and the tracks just end once they get to the top. And I've seen the pictures, and he's a pretty straightforward person. I know her pretty good. And, it's kind of convinced me. I started looking into it, and there's more and more cases of where these tracks just disappear, and it makes you wonder, well, where do they go? And it's like with Angelina, talking to her in her UFO cases, she's telling me about these different encounters that have, there'd be a Bigfoot near or seen, and, it's like they're 1 and 2 together in some areas. And I believe you get a lot of that in North Carolina, don't you?
It seems to be, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fact that all of this happens so close, in the same areas, you can't rule out that there might very well be a connection somehow. And who knows? I mean, maybe they're looking out for the Bigfoot. Maybe the Bigfoot are the scouts on the ground. There's been reports where people have seen the Bigfoot, like, taking soil samples and then disappearing, into a ship. So they could be workers on the ground, so to speak.
Exactly.
And it's probably easier to consider the possibility of a spiritual aspect of the Bigfoot if you think about some of the more spiritual experiences that people have. There is a man, he's actually a pastor, and he was having experiences with a reptilian coming into his bedroom, which is, he said he was like a little kid and pulled a blanket up over his head. But he learned to connect spiritually in a better way, and that stopped. But then he had a very, very, very life-threatening health problem. And one night, what he would call like a Pleiadian, which is a very human-looking type ET, appeared at the foot of his bed, never said a word, was there just briefly. He felt a sense of peace, and the next morning he was healed. So those are beings that can appear very, very physical and then can disappear in a blink of an eye. So why not with the Bigfoot too? I just don't have my own stories that I can somehow verify to absolutely say that's a reality.
Another thing that I've thought about is, how they talk about how they'll disappear and stuff like that. Do you think, how you hear people, their spirits who have ghosts. I'm wondering if they might have ghosts that some people might come across in the wilderness. You might see it and then it just disappears. It kind of makes you wonder if they don't have their own ghost side, paranormal side. Maybe you're not seeing an actual living one, but you've seen one that's lived there in the past.
Mhm. It's possible. The longer you're in this kind of exploration, the more you realize you can't shut the door on anything.
Exactly. It's opened my mind.
The weirdest thing that I personally have had happen before my very own eyes, and somebody else was there, was we returned to a place where there were Bigfoot sightings, and when we pulled up to the house, before even getting out of the car, there was this black dog that looked like one of those Pharaoh's dogs from ancient Egypt, and it walked. It was black. It walked in front of us, and as it walked in front of us, it then disappeared right in front of our eyes. And that's probably one of the stranger experiences that I personally have witnessed with another witness, involving exploring Bigfoot stories.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like a guardian type guard dog for the property. So I guess we were okay. We didn't get stopped.
Yeah, that's good. That's certainly good. Wow, there's been some amazing stories. Mary, our time is going to be up in 5 minutes. Do you have one favorite story you'd like to share with us out of all your exploration and your reporting and everything?
First of all, if people are really interested in a Bigfoot story, please go to Skyships.com. On the home page, there is a section. It's simply labeled ETs, Bigfoot, and Other Beings, but it's just ET and Bigfoot. Open it up and spend some time going through the different archives. We've done so much, and when you realize that we've got close to 60 different postings about Bigfoot, you'll understand why it's hard to have a favorite. The one that's probably is way too elaborate to get into in 5 minutes is one that people can look up. Just type in Valley of Bigfoot in the search bar on the homepage, Valley of Bigfoot, and a story will come up from, I think, the 2015 archives, and it was involving every aspect. We saw the good aspect and the bad aspect of the Bigfoot. We saw writing that had been done on walls by the Bigfoot. We saw where we found hair samples. We found the claw marks where they were trying to open the door to the house. It's just a very, very involved story. And if people are really interested in it, that is the one to look up. Basically,
okay, well,
the story,
Valley of Bigfoot, right?
Valley of Bigfoot, and that should get you to the story. And basically, the people knew that there was Bigfoot on the land. There was never any problem. And then what happened was they have a pond on the property, and somebody was out there with a jackhammer trying to fix the pond or the dam for the pond, and it broke through into something hollow, and suddenly the whole pond just instantly drained out and collapsed into to nothing. Well, in hindsight, that was the collapse of the cave where the Bigfoot had been living, and they were pissed off. And eventually, all was forgiven, and they actually left a little basket, and there's a picture of it with the story. It was like they'd taken a piece of raggedy burlap and kind of shaped it into a little basket, and they had these little shiny things that they had found, like old coins and stuff, and put it in it, and they left it at the front door. And then all the mischief stopped, and it seemed to be a peace offering. And that was done after we were really telepathically trying to communicate with the Bigfoot to let them know that was nobody intended to do that. And so that's another example of perhaps telepathy really working with the Bigfoot.
Well, that's a great story. I'm going to go look at that as soon as we're done here, Mary. And so I wanted to say thank you so much for being with us today on Bigfoot and Company. Matt, do you have any closing remarks for us?
Well, it was nice meeting you, Mary. Sorry I missed you down there at Expedition Bigfoot. But I'm sure I'll run into you. You'll be at the Georgia Bigfoot Conference, correct?
There's a real strong possibility.
Okay, great. Because I'm looking forward to meeting you.
Okay, it was nice to hear your story.
Yes, thank you for sharing some of your stories.
And thank you so much, Mary. It really was great, and we'll be in touch, and I look forward to reading more of your stories and checking out some of them online. And since I am now a card-carrying member of the Rabun County Public Library, I have this wonderful book that I've got to finish reading, and I might give you a ring up and chat with you about this. I cannot wait on your book, Cherokee Little People Were Real. Is this still available? Is this still in print, or is this something that's gone out of print now?
I have 3 books. I have 3 books in print. They're all available through Amazon. One is Cherokee Little People Were Real. One is Underground Military Bases Hidden in North Carolina Mountains. And the third is quite different. It's Tangible Evidence of Jesus Left Behind for Us to Find, just tangible evidence of Jesus. And it's archaeological and scientific information that certainly broadens the understanding of the man that everybody thinks they know from reading the Bible.
Wow, thank you so much for telling us that. I will, if it's all right with you, I'll put a link on Bigfoot and Company to your Amazon sites so that people can find those. Those sound wonderful, and I'm going to get myself a copy so that I can return this book back to the library like I should. So thank you very much, Mary. It's been a pleasure. Everybody go to Skyshipsovercashers.com, read the great stories. You can join an email list there, right, Mary?
They'd have to send me an email, and there's a place on the front page that talks about how to report a contact, and my email address is in there.
Okay, great. So get in touch with Mary through her email. Thanks so much. Matt, on behalf of Matt Delph and myself, Dr. John, we will see you next week on Bigfoot and Company. See you then.
Bye-bye.